Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. There's a lot of conversation out there about what's the easiest claims to file, what's the most common claims, what can I get approved easily. Those types of comments and conversations exist. And honestly, the answer isn't as clear as it might sound. So, with that, let's jump into it. Before we do, though, I want to throw on a special thank you to Elder Bubby. Elder Bubby, thank you so much for the super comment, super chat. Very generous of you. Thank you so much, Elder Bubby. And you know what? Congratulations on your claim. Getting it awarded at that level is definitely a steep hill. So glad you made it and happy that you're there. Congratulations on that. All right, so jumping into this, the easiest claim out there or the most commonly awarded claims and all of that stuff really boils down to understanding the claims process. It's not an individual answer, right? Those types of comments, those types of answers, that type of information is very blanket and very, inclusive to all veterans, right? It's not specific to an individual veteran or an individual group of veterans that served in a specific area. It's very much a blanket, all veterans that have applied approach, which, I don't know, can be dangerous. So there's two things. And look, I pulled up the breakdown that I guess a normal person would probably get if they Google searched, what's needed for a successful claim. And quite frankly, they're missing a couple things in there. And this is the danger, right, of trying to go about it yourself. If you just do one search and you're done and you figure that's all you need, you could be not navigating it appropriately. So it's important to understand the nuance, if you will, of VA claims specific to your situation. Now, I'll throw this out there. I'm going to give you the answer to the question, what's the easiest claim? And then I'm going to really dive deep on how to accomplish it. The easiest claim for any single veteran out there is the claim that you can provide evidence for that will get you approved. That's the easiest claim. So really the conversation should be, well, how do I do that? And what is actually available for me to claim? Now, I'll tell you one, I guess, dead end in veterans' minds when it comes to VA disability compensation is look, I get it. Most of you understand because you're watching this stuff, but there's a whole big group of veterans out there that don't. And they may believe that you must have a condition that was caused by your service, and that is it. That is the only option for disability compensation. Now, many of you watching understand that that's not necessarily true. The military doesn't have to have caused it necessarily, right? It could be a condition that manifested during your time in service. And the way that the VA looks at that is you may have had a pre-existing condition that was bottled up, nobody knew about it, and then it got worse while you were in service, right? So you could come from a family history of migraine sufferers. Everybody in your family, mom, dad, brother, cousins, everybody has migraines. They all started getting migraines at 22 or 20. You joined the military, and then sure enough, when you turned 20 or 22 or whatever, while you were in service, you started to develop migraines. If you went and got diagnosed for those migraines, that would be the easiest way. But if you got diagnosed for those during your time in service, well, now they've manifested during your time in service, and that's a service-connectable condition. Now, there are ways you can trace back and do it without that evidence in your time in service. You can, work on that, and we'll touch on that as well. So it's really opening up the mindset to what is actually available to claim, right? When you look at it through the lens of, okay, that condition must have either been caused by my time in service in some fashion, or that condition manifested during my time in service. That opens up a whole new level of thinking. And it's important to understand how impactful that statement really is when it comes to getting your disability claim approved. Now, I'm going to talk about the components of getting approved. I'm going to dive into what shows up online when you do this as well, so you just understand the different information that's out there and maybe there's missing pieces. When I think about getting, and this is important, so hang on with me. When I think about getting approved for a disability compensation claim, I think of two things. One, the approval, getting it granted as service connected or secondary or whatever it is. The other thing that I think of is the appropriate rating. Okay, these two things go hand in hand. Obviously, one needs to happen before the other, the service connection piece, but you can also pull in all the information to get properly rated at the same time. So why not focus on that during your claim development? So the number one thing that you should always do is put in your intent to file. Number one, buys you time, takes the pressure off, and you can start developing your claim. Now, if you cannot find an accredited representative, an accredited, capable, and competent veteran service officer or what have you, we're happy to help. Evidence-based VA claims, information is in the description and in the comments, and we're happy to take the ball for you and help you develop your game plan for your disability compensation. Now, your intent to file is in place. Now, you're going to start developing your claim. There's three things that you really need to hit. One is you need to prove your time in service, right? So you need to prove your time in service and character of discharge. You get your DD-214 or DD-214s, and that opens up that window of opportunity, I call it. Entry date, exit date, and we're just talking about direct service connections. We're excluding, the idea of presumptives. Presumptives are an easier route. You don't need to really prove the nexus. It's simply based on where you served and when you served, and a list of conditions that are attributed to that block of time and location. So for direct service connection, we have our window of opportunity, your entry date, exit date, character of discharge, not dishonorable, and then we're moving forward. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, you must have a condition, right? You can't be filing for something you don't have. So you should absolutely get diagnosed for that condition. That condition should be chronic in nature or have some sort of an ongoing problem, some sort of residual impacts. Okay, and the number three spot here, you know what? Let me back up. Back on diagnosis, chronic in nature, residual effects, that type of stuff. If your doctor wants to prescribe you something, to take that prescription, make sure you make copies of that prescription, and that can also become evidence. One, it kind of doubles down on the diagnosis. No doctor is going to prescribe you something for a condition that you don't have. So it doubles down on that, which, whatever, it's just extra. But also, in some, not all, but in some cases, a prescription for your condition may warrant a higher rating, right? Or maybe it's a skin cream that's damaging your clothing, and now it warrants a clothing allowance. Whatever, you get it. One take, Jake. Here we go. So, so get that prescription, and then that could open up the door to other things, either a higher percentage, other benefits like clothing allowance. All right, so that's the second piece, the diagnosis stuff. Third piece here is the nexus. Now, you often hear nexus letter. Nexus and nexus letter are not the same thing. So if somebody says you need a nexus, they don't necessarily mean you need a nexus letter. A nexus letter helps you to establish the nexus. The nexus is required. So what the VA is saying here is, show me the link. Prove to me the link between your condition and your time in service. Now remember, it's not just the Humvee, got hit by an IED and my leg got messed up, right? That's not the only way. It could be I was in and I was fine, and then a couple years in I started getting migraines, right? So now you need to prove to the VA that your migraines in that example manifested during your time in service. Now, how do you do that? Ideally, the nexus, the required nexus, show me the link, right? Ideally, you got documentation during your time in service. That's the ideal, perfect situation, perfect storm. However, many of us rub dirt on it, move forward, and drink water and change our socks, and that's it. So we don't have a lot of in-service documentation. In some cases, you may be surprised, and you may have documentation that you didn't really realize. So you should absolutely, if you do not have, you should order your service treatment records. Your service treatment records can be ordered with the SF, that's standard form, Sierra, Foxtrot, SF form 180. I think of it like a 180, degree. So looking back, ordering your old records. So side note, you can also order records of past loved ones. So loved ones who had passed away, maybe a grandfather or uncle or what have you. If they passed away, you can order their records as next of kin, which is a nice keepsake as well. So just kind of a side note there. So order your records. You may have completed information in there that is going to be beneficial for your nexus. You may have completed a self-assessment, for example, maybe an exit self-assessment or an annual health assessment where you're checking boxes. Have you now or have you ever experienced any of the following? Painful swollen joints, headaches, high blood pressure, whatever. And you're checking these boxes. So that can also become evidence. So in the realm of evidence, if you're looking for nexus letter, for example, to tie that condition back to your time in service from a medical perspective, which is highly suggested if you do not have a diagnosis and solid medical evidence in your file, you're probably going to want to get a nexus letter. So you can do that with your doctor, but you really want to make sure that they're honing it in for what the VA is looking for. If they can't, won't, or they don't, reach out to AME, American Medical Experts. Their information is in the description and in the comments as well. Check them out. They are board certified doctors, super solid, and they can help you out with anything from diagnosis to nexus letters, DBQs, and so forth. So now we've touched on the three things that are required for your service connection, right? Ideally, for the nexus, you have information inside your medical records. If you don't, you're going to need to double down with lay statements, a statement from yourself, statement from loved ones, statement from people that may have known you while you were serving, the nexus letter, like I had said. Those things really will help to create the nexus, right? The quick example, and I'm just going to use migraines for the example again. You may have had migraines while you were in, and you just didn't document them. Why? Because what are migraines typically treated with and how, right? Especially if you're in your early 20s. You're popping Motrin, you're popping aspirin, and you're moving on. And you're just kind of dealing with it, trying to dole it a little bit so you can get through it. And that's what you learned to do, and that's what you continued to do. And then you went to the grocery store and you bought it. You got hands full of Motrin from your medic or from your corpsman, and that's what you did. So you would write a statement saying that, and that it was maybe frowned upon to actually go to medical for anything. So you didn't. You just went to your corpsman or your medic, and they gave you Motrin, and then you went and bought some from the grocery store, and that's what you did. So you write that down as a statement. Maybe somebody knows that you used to do that. They write you a letter. Maybe you have family members that know. They write a letter attesting to that. You get a nexus letter from your doctor, and then you file your claim. All right. Now, with regard to the appropriate rating, right? You must get rated appropriately. It does you no good. Well, I mean, it does a little bit of good, but it's frustrating if you're not rated appropriately. Again, for example, if your migraines warrant a 50% rating, but you don't realize that they warrant a 50% rating, look, at the end of the day, you're the patient. You understand your situation. And for a lot of this stuff, you can read in the rating schedules where you would fall based on your signs, symptoms, durations, all of that stuff. So take advantage of reading through that stuff, see where you fall, and make sure that you take the time to document it appropriately with your doctor. Now, ideally, your doctor will do a DBQ for you, a disability questionnaire, and really write in there the information that needs to be there as it relates to the rating schedule. And again, if your doctor can't, won't, or doesn't, it might make sense for you to work with AME, American Medical Experts, and have them do the DBQ for you. Again, board certified doctors, they'll review all your medical records and then they'll fill out that form for you. Now, here's the thing. Going through and making sure that you have the appropriate rating documented will save you a bunch of heartache and issues with filing for the HLR, filing for a supplemental claim, or even having to push it to the board. So take the time to do it up front. Highly suggested. And with that, I'm gonna shift over to the information that I pulled up here and share this with you, and just kind of, if somebody were to Google search, right, what's needed for a successful VA claim, what shows up? Let's read through it and see what they are missing, because my initial thought here is they're going to be missing the idea of filing the appropriate evidence to get rated correctly. Again, if you don't know what the VA is looking for with respect to the criteria for a 50% rating for migraines, and you would actually meet that criteria, but you never looked and you don't know, and instead you just kind of fumble through it and you give them the information and criteria that's needed for a 10% rating because you don't really know what they're looking for, now you're stuck with the 10% rating. So is that a successful VA claim? No, it's not, in my opinion. A successful VA claim is getting it approved at the right rating. It's twofold. All right, so a successful VA disability claim requires three things: a current diagnosis, evidence of an in-service relevant event, and a medical nexus connecting the two. All right, so, okay, current diagnosis, yes. Evidence of an in-service related event, well, maybe, because look, you started getting migraines while you were in. That's the event, is that you started to get migraines while you were in. And then the last one there is that medical nexus connecting the two. So the service related event is basically talking about that time of your time in service, right? Entry date, exit date, that DD-214 that spells out that time frame. So you're looking for something in that time frame and then really tying it to it. So you must also submit supporting evidence like military and medical records, and a VA claim exam may be scheduled to gather more information. And here's another thing. People sometimes think you can submit a DBQ to the VA, have your doctor fill out a DBQ, Disability Benefits Questionnaire. You take that to your doctor's office, you give it to the front desk, you say, hey, can you have the doctor fill this out regarding my condition X? They say, yes, come back in a week or two, and it should be completed. You come back, you pick it up, you file it. Well, you may think, one, that it's helping you, and you may also think, well, maybe now I won't have to go to a CMP exam. Sure, if it was completed correctly. However, unless you are training your doctor on how to complete a disability questionnaire in the fashion in which the VA is looking for, that disability questionnaire is not going to do anything for you other than double down on the fact that you have a diagnosis. The VA is looking for, really, with a DBQ, Disability Benefits Questionnaire, they are really looking for, give me the information that I need so that way I can do two things: service connect or not service connect, and decipher where we should fall on the rating schedule. If there's no real mention to the exact criteria in the rating schedule, the VA is going to say, hey, we need to get a CMP exam because I can't decipher where this person should be. It just says they have condition X and they don't really spell it out like I need it to make the appropriate decision with regard to a rating. So garbage in, garbage out. Again, that's why it's so important that you complete the DBQ correctly. Don't just throw it against the wall. Don't leave it in the hands of somebody else. You need to actually have that conversation and drive that conversation with regard to completing the DBQ. Now, if you can't, your doctor won't, or whatever, then AME, they understand what the VA is looking for because that's what they do. So just want to throw that out there. All right, so here's a breakdown of what you need. A current diagnosis, it says a physical or mental disability. You need a current diagnosis for the condition you're claiming. 2, a service-connected event. In-service injury or illness. You must show that you experienced an event, injury, or illness during your active duty service. So, to me, that's already that's doing two things, right? So if you're providing that information, one, it's you've already provided the diagnosed condition, and now you're already showing that that event had happened in service, and now it says a medical nexus, the link. There must be a medical link or nexus connecting your current diagnosis to the in-service event. Well, the event itself being during your time in service is the link. So it's a little bit misleading, I think, that the way that they're explaining it here. I like the idea of here's your time in service. You have your time in service. You have a diagnosis. That diagnosis could be outside of your time in service. That happens all the time, right? You served here. You got diagnosed over here. Well, now you need to build a bridge back to your time in service to create that nexus. All right, moving on. Here it says what to submit as evidence: service treatment records, your military, medical, and personnel records, separations documents, your DD 214 or other separation documents, medical records, any medical evidence like doctor's reports, results from medical tests, or reports from your private healthcare providers that show your diagnosis and how it relates to your service. Statements, personal statements explaining the event in service and your current symptoms, as well as statements from families, friends, or buddies. So there's two different things here. They only mention one form. So they do mention a form, which is kind of nice. They mention the 21-10-210. So the 21-10-210 is the form that would be used for your buddy statements, right? People maybe that served with you, they could attest to their knowledge of you experiencing condition X. You can also use it with your family members. Maybe you have a family member that is going to write a letter expressing their knowledge of you suffering from whatever condition that it first resulted in your time in service, and maybe you came back on leave and they saw that you were sitting down with a bottle of Motrin or whatever. So that's great. Utilize that form for that if you can. It's just keeps it nice and clean for the VA. The other form is the 4138. So the 4138 is a statement in support of your claim. So you yourself would write your own statement on that form. So I was, discouraged from going to medical. I saw other people go to medical and then they ended up getting, bad treatment or have to do, duty hours or whatever. Or they were on different working parties because they did that. So I decided I'm not going to do that, and I just went to my doc or my corpsman or my medic and would get a handful of Motrin. And then I just went to the grocery store and I bought Motrin and I just dealt with it myself and I pushed through, right? So it wasn't until 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later that I decided to go get diagnosed from my doctor and get an actual prescription for my condition. So that story makes sense, right? You want to have a make sense explanation of why you didn't get documented during your time in service, right? A compound fracture leg wouldn't make sense for you to say, I just rubbed some dirt on it and moved forward. That should be documented in your records. If not, well, and you're trying to claim that 20 years later, probably not going to happen. Twisted ankles, those types of things, probably you could limp that off and just kind of suck it up. I know I did. In SOI, School of Infantry, the last forced march that we did, which was, 20-something miles with the full load, and I stepped in some sort of a rut and just jacked my ankle up, but we only had like two more miles to go or something, so I got up and I hopped and did the hibbity hop, kept going, and made it through it. My ankle swelled up, huge, but I, in a weird way, one, being younger, right? And two, I think that the continued kind of movement on it and having the boot on helped it a little bit. So I survived and made it through. Anyway, so I think that there's a lot of that goes on. All right, so the statements come in valuable. Now let's move on here. The VA's role, claim exam. The VA may schedule a compensation and pension exam, also known as claim exam, to gather more information about your condition. Oftentimes, it's because we don't supply them everything that they're looking for to, one, grant, and two, get you the right rating. Two, evidence gathering. They will review all evidence submitted and may gather additional medical records from your private providers. They'll only do that from your private providers if you allow them the authority to do so. And quite frankly, it takes a little bit longer because now they're mailing out your private provider, and then you don't really have any control at that point, right? They're going to do their talking back and forth, and you're waning. And if they don't hear anything by 30 days or whatever, they're going to send it again. Highly suggest get all of your evidence together yourself. Anything that you can get, you should get. All right. Tips for a successful claim. It says if you have all of your evidence, you can submit it with your application, which is the 21-526 EZ form. You could do it online, and that's fine. Or you can go through your accredited rep. Like I said, if for some reason you can't find an accredited rep, we're happy to help. The information's in the description. Be thorough. Include details about the event in service and how your condition relates to it. Seek help. Consider contacting a veterans disability lawyer or advocate to help with your claim. A lawyer would not be the first choice. Accredited advocate would be your first choice. In my opinion. See if you can find a free resource that's capable and competent that you can work with, that has your best interests in mind and helps you navigate the system. If for some reason you can't, again, we can help. Evidence-based VA claims. Now, that's it on, this is actually the AI overview that I just read. And here's the thing that they left out, and this is on the question, what's needed for a successful VA claim? So some of it was a little, you kind of got to read between the lines, broaden it out a little bit. It's not super clear. Don't like it. The other piece is they completely left out getting the evidence to support your claim as it relates to the rating schedule. Okay. You just saying, well, I have bad headaches, doesn't mean anything. You have to understand the rating schedule so you can understand, do I meet the criteria for a 10%? Yes. Good. Do I meet the criteria for a 30%? Yes. Good. Do I meet the criteria for a 50%? No. Okay. Drop back down to a 30% and make sure that you document that specific criteria so you can make sure that you're rated appropriately. That should happen for every single condition. With that, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you so very much. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.